In late 2008, gamers who were fans of the survival horror genre got a really awesome treat. The original Dead Space was fresh. It created a new threat that you'd never seen before and left you wondering what was coming up next. It was scary, action-packed, and gory. You were all alone through your journey through it, the occasional update from your crew, or the occasional crazy person.
It's all right, McCoy. He's here. Nothing to be afraid of. I knew you would come. Just like you said. I saved this for you. Can I go now? McCoy wants to take me. Just shut up.
But for the most part, you were all alone. The sounds off in the distance left you shitting your pants. There were cool bosses and some action along the way. There were various puzzles as well, commonly presented in zero-gravity sequences. Zero-gravity was another cool concept that Dead Space has explored, and while it was rather simple in the first game, just jumping from point to point, it was completely redesigned in the second game, but more on that later. Now I personally am not as invested in the Dead Space lore as most people are. While I do love the game itself, please forgive me for any details I either overlook or even get wrong. As Dead Space opens, you are introduced to the main character, Isaac Clarke, a CEC engineer, and the rest of your crew, who only 2 members of are actually important, as the rest of them die. You are on a mission to repair the planet cracker vessel called the USG Ishimura, completely unaware of the gruesome terrors that took place aboard this ship. Upon landing, you and the 4 other members of your crew notice the ship is completely dark. You survive an ungraceful landing and begin to investigate the ship. While running diagnostic, your crew goes under siege with an unknown enemy. You narrowly escape by yourself and begin the descent into hell. Along the way, you find schematics to new weapons and armor, go through some trials and tribulations, and of course, play some basketball in Zero-G. In the end, you destroy the marker, defeat the lackluster final boss, and escape. Your mission is over, right? Well, Isaac goes wherever his home is and takes a nap. No, I'm just kidding, there's a sequel. The second game came out and really expanded upon the first. Are you fucking kidding me? God damn it. Maybe they fucking expanded it too much. You see, in the first game, the fear was unknown. You weren't really familiar with the enemy, and that shit scared you. In the second game, you knew what to expect from the enemy, so they instilled fear by increasing their numbers. This fear was by feeling overpowered. Most encounters with the necromorphs in Dead Space 2 were in situations where you were swarmed. Continuing in the theme of change, Dead Space 2 brought you a whole new area. Instead of a smaller ship in comparison, you were now on a ship where a giant community of people lived. You can see traces of society everywhere, from a school and slash a daycare facility to a whole government sector. This game takes place a few years after the events of the first game, and opens with you in a straitjacket running from a necromorph infestation. Your contact with the marker from the first game made you a key component in creating new markers which the main antagonist, save for the necromorphs Tiedemann, wants for power. The game has many improvements over the first one. While in my opinion I find the first one to be much scarier, the second game has a much better developed atmosphere. Don't get me wrong, I love the Ishimura, but I find the sprawl more appealing. Zero-G was revamped to be fully controllable. I mean, you have rocket boots, which makes you Iron Man. You have full 360-degree control of your character, and you can fly in Zero-G. The arsenal of weapons was updated, and you can rip the limbs off of enemies and launch them back at other enemies using Kinesis, making Kinesis 100% more useful than Kinesis in the first game, as in the first game, you could only use it to move stuff around. It was not good as a weapon. As I mentioned before, most of the fear in the second game lies in the numbers. It was a creative way to make the game scary for fans of the first game. However, I felt that they could have made it less action-oriented and kept with the roots of the first game, and it would have been fine. It doesn't greatly diminish from the experience, however, and can be overlooked, as we still have a great game here. You meet a girl named Dana, who gives you hope of escape and a cure. Spend roughly the first quarter of the game listening to her, only to find out she was a fuck. After you meet her, shit goes down, the game progresses, and you meet a girl named Ellie, who helps you and a man named Strauss escape, although Strauss loses his shit and dies. Isaac becomes a martyr and saves Ellie before he faces his final contact by sending her in a ship without him. The final battle is a battle between you and yourself. You fight the final battle inside your head, after a harpoon to Tideman's face, but that's rather unimportant in my opinion. You defeat the marker and Nicole inside your brain using a Jimmy Neutron brain blast, otherwise you get a cutscene of Isaac killing himself. And what do you know? Sweet Tits Nellie comes to the rescue on her ship that the two of you escape on. I'm sure somewhere along the way, she sets the ship to autopilot and the two of you commence with the act of sexual intercourse in space. Now we have Dead Space 3. First off, I want to say that at the time of release of this video, I will not have enough time to beat the game. However, I have played enough to give you all my opinion. If by some magic the ending actually manages to change my opinion of this lackluster game, I will make an update video, but don't expect an update video. Dead Space 3 takes place on an ice planet called Tau Volantis. Your co-op partner, John Carver, helps you take on the necromorph infestation on this planet. Now, I want to give credit where credit is due. Overall, I don't like this game very much. However, they nailed what people have been complaining about with co-op in horror games since Resident Evil 5. If I play single player, my character is alone, as he should be, which is what single player implies, one player. This is fucking genius. This helps because having a partner always takes away from the horror experience. It's proven. Resident Evil 6 tried to prove co-op and horror can mix with Leon's campaign, but that game is about as scary as a kitten drinking milk. That aside, they try to add a cover system to make the game feel more organic. This complements the more open environment rather well, but I feel the fact that the environment is more open and designed around this cover system, the game is far less scary. Part of the tension in Dead Space came from feeling claustrophobic and not being able to escape. The cover system throws that out of the window. As I mentioned before, the co-op is done rather well. There is an incentive to go through the game alone a first time and then go through it co-op as each player second time and third time. There are elements you miss by only playing the single player, such as certain cutscenes. This is fine, as I personally played Dead Space 1 about 3 times and Dead Space 2 8 times. I can tell you after the first time the game is less scary by nature, simply because you know what is going to happen. This is not a flaw in a game design, just a flaw in horror in general. Playing through a scary game or watching a horror movie more than once makes for a far less scary experience since you know exactly what to expect. You can comment specific examples where this is not the case, but I'm just making a generalization. So saving your co-op playthrough for after you've beaten the game single player will yield for better results. Again, I really appreciate the way Visceral handled co-op, and while I hope co-op in the horror genre doesn't become a permanent trend, this method of presenting the co-op experience to players isn't horrible. That aside, the weapon upgrading system from the first 2 games has been completely revamped. As opposed to gathering nodes to upgrade each respective weapon health and stasis, you gather materials in order to construct all new weapons. You can make various combinations of weapons and even combine 2 weapons together to make one ultimate weapon. I haven't seen an example where combining a flamethrower and a ripper blade has actually yielded good results, but I'm sure I'll find something. This idea makes sense, as Isaac is an engineer. There are blueprints for the weapons from the first 2 games if you're not creative, and the blueprints for weapons you actually do make can be shared in co-op. Again, this is a pretty neat idea. Since this is a new game, I won't spoil any major plot points. I'll only give you the preface, however, so if you want to avoid that, I'd skip this part. This game takes place 2 months after the events of the first. Isaac and Ellie, after having vigorous sex the past 2 months, encounter John Carver and have a devil's three-way after learning he survived the necromorph outbreak as well. The 3 of them discover the frozen planet of Tau Volantis, and the ship breaks apart, separating Isaac from his sex toy. He decides to destroy the marker and end the necromorphs once and for all, although his ulterior motive is to save Ellie. Not too bad if I do say so myself. Personally, I feel this game falls under the same category as Resident Evil 5. I liked that game. I had fun playing it. I thought it was a good game, but not a good Resident Evil game. This is a good game, just not a good Dead Space game. If this were a brand new IP, I would give it much less criticism. But the fact of the matter is, it is a Dead Space game, and it's not up to par with the others. That's what I expect from a sequel. I expect it to take the elements of the first game and refine them a little bit, kind of like Dead Space 2 did with Dead Space 1. The environment, while pretty, is too far astray from the first game. Changing the environment is fine. Resident Evil 1 took place in a mansion, while Resident Evil 2 took place in a city, and while those two games may not hold up today because of their god-awful controls, they are classic examples of what the horror genre should be. I also have a major gripe with EA. Before I say this, I will admit I bought a weapons pack in the other two games, realizing that this was a mistake and a waste of money. Purchasing them only made EA closer to realizing that microtransactions are good for gaming. They are actually killing it. You see, the point of these microtransactions is to speed up grinding. If you don't want to grind through your way of hours of gameplay to collect coins in order to buy the power-up which makes the game easier, you can simply buy the coins necessary to purchase that upgrade with real money. This is a problem because that would mean the games of the future would be nothing more than grindfests if this trend continues. Imagine in Final Fantasy XVI if you could pay to level up quicker. That would defeat the whole purpose of the game. And while grinding in video games sucks the fun out of them, microtransactions are 10 times worse. Dead Space 3 offers this to buy parts for weapons. EA recently did this in SSX where you could buy credits for gear and characters. It's very bad for gaming. If the developers felt it was important to allow players to buy the materials needed to make the weapons, they must have felt it was too much of a hassle to earn them through natural progression, and in turn, regular people like myself, who refuse to buy into the system, have to mindlessly grind for hours to build a better weapon. Again, this is just an assumption on my part. I have not played the game nearly long enough to know if this is the case. I can only assume based on previous trends. Besides the environment giving a lack of horror in the microtransactions, I felt the inclusion of human soldiers was a mistake. Many times I have encountered a group of them being attacked by necromorphs. This is bad because I can see the necromorphs already before they are even aware of my presence, and I can wait for the necromorphs to take out the humans before I take on the necromorphs. It's stupid, unnecessary, and it breaks up the tension felt that if you would have been alone. While you can say there were human soldiers in Dead Space 2, they never actually hindered your progress. You escape them with ease and unleash a horde of necromorphs on them, which adds more necromorphs into the fray for your fight. In this game, I feel it was a mistake. However, you are compensated with enemies that can reanimate these humans, but it's more annoying than scary. I'd like to say this is a good game, but I can't. While the audio and visuals are definitely of Dead Space quality, those don't make a game. The gameplay here is severely lacking. The environment is a very important part of a horror genre, and the environment here is more beautiful as opposed to scary. I found myself looking deeper into the environment than the actual horror. Having necromorphs pop out of the snow occasionally was a creative idea, but it doesn't work as effectively as necromorphs jumping out from vent ceilings, etc. Personally, I would only recommend this game to people who have not played Dead Space before, or people who don't give a shit about any of the things I have mentioned. For hardcore fans of the series, I would also recommend this as it does continue the deep and expansive lore that Dead Space has to offer. For everyone else, you can skip this one. As I play more, I will make an update video for my later impressions. Thanks for watching, and please hit that subscribe button. See ya.